It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear, no fear, no fear here, and declare your independence with me, Ernest Hancock, each and every day here in Phoenix, Arizona, hey, from the beautiful studios of Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com. Today we have scheduled a gentleman that's we're going to get to. We're hooking up with him now, Chris Hedges. He had an article called Empire of Illusion and Death of the Liberal Class. Let's talk about Obama and the corporate rape of America and Israel and Palestine, Middle East, Decay of American Empire. I mean, you know, you're going to do it all up. But we'll go ahead and get to him later. You know, we have stopped by. Senior editor of Freedom's Phoenix, Pal Gamble, came in. And we're going to have him back tomorrow. I think he's got his days mixed up. But what we're going to do is tomorrow we're going to be having Drew Phillips in. He went down to the event in Tucson where the gentleman, Iraq vet, that had the SWAT team come in and riddled him. And it's just, this is not going away. Oath Keepers came here. We know a lot of the guys down there. William Bupert, one of the speakers at our Freedom Summit, author in the upcoming magazine at the end of the week. Ooh, we'll talk about that too. He is going to be calling in tomorrow telling us all the goodies that's going on there. There is a lot of debate on this thing. And what it all comes down to is you can argue the finer points. Ouch, quit it. Did he? No, we were there. Not no ambush. We wanted to get him, kill him anyway. Who his relatives and friends and neighbors were and all. It doesn't matter. Drug war. This is all about this drug war thing. It's an excuse to take away your rights. And it's amazing to me over time how many people of faith and pastors are starting to come out going, yeah, this is not working out how they promised. You know, this is not, you know, it's, and of course, those of a liberty persuasion have been screaming this for decades. Now, this is just an excuse. This is just an excuse to get your goodies, to get into your financial records, to track you, all kinds of, we know where this is going. And now we have, you know, the dubious distinction of having the highest percentage of our population behind bars in a cage. Aren't we proud of ourselves? So we're going to, you know, this is going to, you know, it's one thing that's interesting as the 2012 election cycle comes up. What's happened is we have a story on Freedom's Phoenix today, Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com. And you go there and there is a story that is very telling in the non-coverage of the presidential election cycle. They're going, you know, we're not getting that much coverage, you know, from this time last season election cycle, there was a lot more coverage. So I'm, you know, and the difference is what? Why? You know, I think it might have had a lot to do with this Dr. Paul thing. You start covering the Republican race, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start having a lot of coverage of Dr. Paul and the issues that he brought up last time. Well, these are issues, you ready? These are issues that transcend philosophy. They're just practical reality. This is what's going to, you know, how's your wallet doing? How's the value of your house? How's the depreciating dollar? How does anybody escape what's happening when you look at the inflation in food prices? You can blah, blah, blah all you want. Bottom line is, like Dr. Paul said, people vote from their bellies, man. Ask the Middle East. Well, we have our guest, Chris Hedges, on. Chris wrote the column No, it was the Obama column. It was Empire of Illusion. And I want to make sure we get right to him. He's on Truthdig.com. He had the article, and it came to our attention. And I wanted to talk about it because this yesterday and last week, we've been having a lot of progressives on, and we're trying to find some common ground here. And what's happened is that we're starting to all suffer. What was the saying? Misery loves company. No, it doesn't. Misery does not like company. We just want to be miserable. Chris, I got you there. Oh, I pushed a button. There you go. Chris, I got you there.
Yes, you do.
Chris, thanks for coming on. I'm sorry I had a problem getting hold of you, but I wanted you to go ahead and give your bio and how it is. And I know we see your stuff published on truthdig.com. And of course, it's a progressive viewpoint, perspective, but you have to be looking at the Obama administration and the promises that were made and what's happening, and we're going into another war. They're spending more of our money. They're not giving anything that you were promised, and I'm wondering, where can we as Americans, as individuals, as human beings, have some kind of overlap to where we're like, damn, man, we need to be buddies on this. Where can we overlap?
Well, I think there's a lot of, first of all, I didn't support Obama. I worked for Nader. I wrote all of Nader's policy speeches. And a lot of that was because I came out of the Middle East. I was the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. I spent 7 years there. And I have perhaps a more intimate understanding of how this is probably the greatest foreign policy disaster that we have blundered into ever.
But it's a continuation, isn't it? I mean,
well, it's more than that, because unlike Vietnam, you've upset the balance of power in the Middle East so that Iran becomes ascendant. And not only that, you've destroyed Iraq as the unified country. It will never come back. The experiment that was Iraq after World War I, set up by the British and the Treaty of Lausanne, it's gone. It's not coming back. The consequences of it throughout the region in terms of sectarian strife, the massive expansion of military bases, which have just inflamed the Muslim world against our presence. All of this stuff was just, I think, for all the Arabists, and it really crossed political lines. It included the Arabists in the State Department, the Pentagon, the intelligence community. But this small cobble of Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Pearl, who know nothing about the Middle East, nor the instruments of war. Remember, most of these people like Cheney were draft dodgers. They really, really messed the country up. So I was terrified that the Democrats would, in essence, codify the destruction of international and domestic law put in place by the Bush administration, including, of course, the failure domestically to even restore habeas corpus. Then we just saw an extension of the Patriot Act, the FISA Reform Act. I'm part of the ACLU lawsuit against the government over the FISA Reform Act, which, to remind listeners, is the warrantless wiretapping, eavesdropping, and monitoring of tens of millions of Americans, a clear violation of our constitutional rights. All of this stuff is downloaded, stored by the government, and not only that, but shared with friendly countries. And for those of us who work a lot in the Middle East, we know exactly which country that is. So it's really disturbing stuff. And I think that you were talking about Ron Paul, I assume, earlier. I mean, it's really interesting because there is a kind of convergence between the stance of Nader, who, doesn't use the word, but in essence is a socialist, and Ron Paul and the libertarians. I mean, I think if there's a break, and there is a break between those of us on the left, and I say that by way of qualification. When I mean left, I mean real opponents of the Democratic Party, which I am. The break comes over regulations. For me, libertarianism would be great if we didn't live in a corporate state with these massive entities like ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs. I don't know, what if government doesn't intervene to regulate and control them, then I don't see that there is any regulation. And I think that that's probably the biggest break. All of the critiques on the Federal Reserve, the misuse of currency, the deficits, the imperial war.
Chris, we are going to have a very interesting conversation. We're going to push the button on us here in a couple of seconds, but I tell you this. Corporations are a creation of the state. No state, no corporations. Oh, it's going to be interesting. You guys stay right there. We'll be right back on Declare Your Independence.